Yeah, what I want to do is show you how to create your own original class. And so we're going to, it's a user-defined class. So we started with a project called date class. So make sure you do a solution using just a standard console application. Your solution explorer will have, when you create it, date class or whatever you named it. And so in here, what we're going to do is we're going to define our class first, and I really want to focus on constructors. So the constructor is when you create a new object. So if you put, for example, string my name equals like Chris, you're basically constructing a string object. Or if you put like date time, for example, date time, my time equals new, and you have this date time, and you do this, you're constructing a new object here. It's that new keyword. So date time's already built into the system, and let me show you one other feature you want to see here. When I do new date time, there's 12 different ways we can create a new date time. The first one is that we give it no value at all. Second one, we give it a thing called long ticks. And we have a series of these different things that we can do. And notice date time dot date time. So there's this other thing we can do on there. And so there's all these different options here when you create a new object. Well, we're going to make our own date object, and it'll be just like the date struct. So, but it'll be an object, not a structure, and we'll have additional things that we can do with it. So the first thing you want to do is create a new class. So I right-click on the name of the solution, just not where it says solution, but right under it, the name of the class. And I'm going to choose add, and you should have add class, Shift Alt C available. If you don't, just do new item, and then you will see class. It should be at the top. You'll see this .cs. So the key here is whatever you name your class, keep it simple. Capitalize the name. So capital D date. That's what it is. Click add. And now, let's zoom in a little bit here. Here is our class definition. Now I want to line it up side by side with program.cs. So we do that by choosing a new vertical tab group. And now we can see on the left is our date class. On the right is class. I'm sorry, the left is program. The right is date. So this program is kind of the driver. It drives everything. And then anything we want to create for our project in the form of other objects we can do it by just creating new classes. So the first thing we want to do is set the fields. I'm sorry, declare the date fields. Okay, so we're going to have one for string. Actually, it should be capital S, string. And then we'll put title. So we're going to have a title for our dates. We're going to have a year. We're going to have a month. They're all going to be integers. And then int day. So we declare our date fields. Okay, so that this creates it, makes them available. Oh, we're going to also do day of year. Int day of year. Okay, so these are our fields. If we want to add more, we just go into the class and we add them there. Now what we want to do is add our constructor. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a default parameterless constructor. Parameterless constructor. So guess what we won't have in our constructor? Parameters. Correct. Okay, so what we do is we're going to make it public so that this constructor is accessible to date class. We'll make it accessible to other classes in our project. So we put public, and now the key here is we do the same spelling and capitalization as our class. And then we do an open and close parentheses because this is parameterless. Had we had parameters, they'd be in here. And so we start with the one that requires the least amount of information, in which case a parameter one requires no information to create a date object. And all we have to do is put on here what our values for everything are going to be as a default value. So for the title, we're just going to set this to default date. Oh, sorry. Quotation mark, default date. Quotation mark, semicolon. Okay, so we're just going to set each of these values in here. And so we will start every date with year 1. Year equals 1, month equals 1, day equals 1, and then we could put day of year. And the only reason, now normally I wouldn't, but we already know the value of it, so I put it in because we know the day of year on year 1, month 1, day 1 is 1. So you might as well go ahead and set it right there. Now there may be a reason why we don't, but for now I'm not going to worry about it. And this creates our parameterless constructor. So in order to test this out, we're going to create a date object in our main method. So I'm going to slide this over here so we can see it. And so we're going to put date because it's a date object. Notice when I don't type anything, it already highlights class date, class.date. That means it knows we're pulling from the date that's in our date class. And there it is. There's the title of it right there. So date. We'll just call it default date. Equals new. Look at this. Date. Right there, it knows we're doing it. Okay, and then once we have it, we now have a default date. So what we're going to do is we're going to do some outputs. We'll do console.writeLine. We'll just put default date. Okay, and then we'll do a read line. It probably doesn't matter whether it's read or read line. Read line puts the cursor on the next line, and read just would put it at the end of default date. And now we're going to run it, and there's a little problem here, and you'll see in just a moment. So we're going to go ahead and run it, and we're going to see, did it construct it? Probably. And there's our response. All we get is just the name of the object, and that we don't want. So the question is, did we even get it to work? So the only way we can do this is we're going to need to have a toString method so we can override that value. Okay, well, what we need to do now is we need to create a toString method, a better looking toString method. So toString override. Okay, so public and override. It already knows that we want to override the string, and I think we have to capitalize the S in string. No, we don't. Never mind. ToString. Look at that. Bam. I no more than get that much done when it's huge. There we go. Anytime you have a method that gives it a data type, that means we have to return that data type. So what we're doing here is this is what default does. The default toString method returns base.toString, and base refers to the base class, the master class, which is in the system. I think it's system.object, and you could find out by after using system you put dot and you put O. No, it's not. Anyways, it's somewhere in the system. It's one of these files has object available. We need to return a string, and we could just do it like this, but that does us no good. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the string. We're going to use a static method called format. So we'll do a capital S string dot format. And this format, as you can see, we've got a bunch of different options available. So what we're going to do is we're going to give it a string, and then we're going to give it some variable titles. Let me just start out here as default. Okay, the first thing we want to do is do the title. So what we do is we put a placeholder for the value of a variable, 0. Okay, format here. Now let's just move this over so we have full access to this. So format, colon, okay, so on the first one, 0, it's going to be the argument that gets sandwiched inside of these quotation marks, and that would be title. Okay, so if all we want to do is return the title, that's how we do it. But we want to do the rest, so we're going to put 1 will be the next variable, slash, we'll put 2, slash, 3, and then we can even put day of year, and we'll put 4. We don't have to, but it'd be a nice little touch here. So now we got a bunch of arguments, and so each one of these has to have a variable. So what we're going to do is we're going to do month, day, year, and day of year. Now let's test this out to see if it works. So we're testing out program.cs, which has that console.writeLine, where all we're doing is we're printing default date. So let's see how that works with the toString override and see if we got it to work. And there it is, default date, 111, day of year 1. Okay, so we know now we've got the default constructor that requires no parameter, and it just initializes an object with all the default values. On the next tutorial, I'll show you how to make other flavors of a constructor where you actually can provide some of the information and the object will retain that information.